So now we have our web application and we need to add some code so that it can call the proper web service, get back the data, and display it in the grid. We're going to start with button load, and we're going to add a basic event binding to it. Event bindings are a lot like triggers in the progress world. We're going to add a click event binding, which generates a function off of the button for button load click. On button load click, this function will be called, and I'm going to cut and paste the code it'll execute to avoid typos. Go back to progress, grab the load code, paste it in. We define a variable to hold the store object. So variable store equals extsingleton.getStore, the store data that we defined earlier. We're then going to access the proxy of the store and the URL attribute of the store. This is the same URL attribute we hard-coded earlier. We're going to set it to the same value. Later on, we'll see how to set this to the value appropriate for our environment. But for now, we'll just leave the hard-coded localhost doctors API, the doctor.p call with a method of get. We then tell the store to load the data, sort of like what we're doing in design mode when we right-clicked and said load the data. This will do it programmatically. Let's do the same thing on our button server filter. We'll add a basic event binding on the click event. And cut and paste the code in. This is almost exactly the same code as our load, only we're going to add 2 query parameters. So we do the same thing, store equals get store store doctor, going to set the URL, only this time we're going to put a query parameter called filter field for the series type value and a filter value of new. We'll see what that does in a minute. And then we'll do the same thing on button fail. Basic event binding, click event, go to the code editor, and we'll cut and paste that as well. In this case, we get the store, and we're going to set its URL, and we're going to make a mistake. Filter field is going to be series type instead of type. I know in my code that I used a dynamic query to get the data, and it's looking for a field name series type, so we should get an error back, something along the lines of unknown field or buffer field not found, or something that I can't quite remember, but we'll see. Let's save our project, and we'll push the publish button to push it out to the web server. Now we'll go over to the web page, and in this case, I made another mistake. So if I hit the load button, and I will refresh the page just to make sure I've got the new code, nothing's happening. I'm going to hit F12 to turn on my debugging tools and go to the console, and we see there was an uncaught type error, cannot read proxy of undefined. If I push the button again, the same error comes up. I'm able to click on the viewport JS and see the actual line that's failing. So the store, ext get store, call failed. We did not find a store called store doctors. I'll go back to manage doctors, look at my store, and sure enough, I pluralized it. It's store doctors, not store doctor. So let's fix that. It's now store doctor. Save our project, push it out to the web server. Hit F5 to refresh the page and click on our load button, and we can see it loaded. We have a list of doctors with a series type of classic and new. Now we'll try the server filter button. It only returned the doctors with a series type of new. Now we'll try the fail button. Nothing happened, although we do see in our debugger tools that we did get an error of some kind, ambiguous buffer field reference known to query, but nothing's happening in the app. If I close developer tools and press the fail button, nothing's happening. This is because we didn't actually catch the exception. An exception's coming back, but in the case of a failure, nothing's being done. So we'll go back to the project, go to our store, and on the Ajax proxy, we're going to add an event binding. in the event of an exception. So now we have a place to put exception code. Once again, we'll cut and paste. Cut back again. So in the case of a failure, we're going to put up a message box, alert, application error. We're going to take the request object passed back on exception and put out its status text. And then within parentheses, we're going to put out the status. So we'll save this, publish it, refresh the page. Now when we click on the fail button, we see a message box does come up, application error. Dr. Siri's SIPE must be a quoted constant or unabbreviated ambiguous buffer field or reference, blah, blah, blah. Progress error 7328, and Sencha is displaying, I'm sorry, the exception came back with the 500 in it. The load button and the server filter button, of course, still work as no exceptions coming back, only in the case of a failure. Now this is a pretty ugly grid with a whole bunch of information that we can't see. It's not laid out very well, so let's do something about that. Go back into our design view, and let's go to the actor column, make it a little bit wider. I'm going to come back to my viewport, and I want to set its background color to silver. Well, remember, all of this is just JavaScript and HTML, so you're able to use CSS and all that fun stuff that most of you are used to. So there is a style in the config for the viewport. And double click to edit it. And we're going to tell it to have a background color of silver. Save that. Go back to our design view. We can see that it actually becomes silver in the background, so the grid stands out. Now we want the bio to fill up the available space in the grid. Sencha has what's called flex. Flex is a little hard to explain. I'm going to give the column a flex value of 1, and that means fill up all available space. The number is a ratio as compared to the other items with a flex. So if I gave all the columns a flex of 1, they would all be equal width, and as you make your browser wider, they would all expand equally. If I gave one of them a flex of 2 and all the rest a flex of 1, that one column would be twice the size of the rest. So you come up with the ratios, you come up with the numbers, and basically any value other than 0 says fill it, and then it's a ratio in reference to all the other items that have a flex within that area. I also want to add word wrapping to this column so that we can see all the data in the bio field. We're going to come over, and in order to do this, we want to add what's called a renderer. So I will add one to it, and that appeared up here in the bio. Double click on it to get into the code. A renderer is an interceptor method used to transform what's being displayed to the screen. So this function is called, and the value that would have been displayed is passed to it. The metadata is passed to it. We can now adjust that metadata and adjust the value and then send it back. So the first thing I'm going to do is change the metadata.style and do white space normal, which should cause word wrapping. We also have to remember to return the value that was passed in, or else it will display nothing. Now, we can also change the value. So let's do that on a different column. Let's go over to the series type column, and we'll add a renderer to that. And in this case, we want to transform the data. We want if the value passed in is new, we'll return back the word modern instead of new. Else, can't forget our else. return the value passed in. So only if the value coming in is new, we'll put it out as modern, else we'll return value. Save our project, publish it. So we can see right now it's new, classic, and we can see the ugly bio. We'll refresh the page, do a load, and now we see the bio field has filled up and pushed the columns across, so it fills it up. It's word wrapping, so we can read the entire bio. If I scroll down, we see instead of seeing the words new, we see modern. I click on server filter, we only see the new ones, but of course modern's displayed. This standard data grid comes with built-in functionality, such as if I click on the doctor ID, it sorts up and down. The columns can be moved, columns can be resized. Of course, you'll have to programmatically store any values if you want this to come up next time. If I refresh now, it just goes back to the way it was before. So this is showing data that's been pulled from a Progress Webspeed web service on a local host, but we haven't seen yet how to integrate this with our Webspeed application and to call different web services depending whether we're in development or test or live. We'll do that in the next section.